So with Easter coming up this Sunday, I've been reflecting a lot on my confirmation process and how that first week of being Catholic went for me. And I have to say that it didn't go so well. So prior to becoming Catholic, I partied a lot. I was not a very great person, and to this day, I don't feel like I am. But regardless, when I converted, I expected my family to be like really excited, which they were, but they didn't even schedule a Easter dinner, like a celebratory dinner. And, I kind of threw a little bit of a fit about it, and we ended up going to Applebee's. But the next day I was still so upset, I ended up going and seeing a psychic. And essentially after I did, I was seeing a spiritual director at the time, and he was like, well, you know about the story of Saul, right? Just like, maybe, kind of. Like, he went and saw a medium in the Old Testament, right? And he's like, well, yeah, and he died. I was like, wait, how does it go? So in the Old Testament, Samuel's going along, he's the king of Israel, the Philistines, they're at war, and Saul is essentially the next successor. And Saul is not a great person. He, in 1 Samuel 13, he actually ends up offering a peace offering to the Philistines, which is when he is first denounced by Samuel. And then David, King David, that's the family line of Christ, is who God had chosen to take over as the king of the Israelites. And going forward, I think it's 1 Samuel 23, is where Saul is in this extended time with the Philistines. He's not hearing from God. None of the prophets are speaking. And so he's already cast out all of the mediums, all the spiritists, and has essentially said, you are evil. The Old Testament condemns it. Back in Deuteronomy 18, verses 10 through 12, it says, there shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire, purgatory, or one who practices witchcraft, or a soothsayer, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For all who do these things are an abomination to the Lord. And essentially that's because we're not putting our faith in God's hands for our future. So back to the story. So Saul seeks out this medium, and he disguises himself, and he asks her to conjure up a spirit. And she says, you know that I'm banned, like, you'd make me risk my life. And he says, I swear to the Lord, like, you will not, it's okay. So she says, okay, who do you want me to summon? And he says, Samuel. So then she sees the spirit rise from the ground, and Samuel comes forward, and he's like, why have you disturbed me? And Saul was like, I don't know what to do, like, everything, like, it's falling apart, I'm not hearing anything. And Samuel's essentially like, you knew that this was bad. And let's see exactly what it says here. Samuel says, why do you consult me now that the Lord has turned away from you and become your enemy? The Lord has done what he has predicted through me. The Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it to one of your neighbors, to David. Because you did not obey the Lord or carry out his fierce wrath against the Amalekites, the Lord has done this to you today. The Lord will hand over both Israel and you to the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The Lord will also hand over the army of Israel to the Philistines. So essentially Samuel says, okay, well, you know what, you want to know the future? You're going to die tomorrow. So when I went and saw the psychic, it was interesting because she essentially said, whoever I am most spiritually connected to, which at that point was a little confusing. I had been dating a guy who had gotten me involved in the Catholic Church. I also had a very strong connection with a toxic guy in my life, but then also I had just been confirmed Catholic, so now in retrospect I wonder if she couldn't have been actually talking about God and saying that he was the one I was most closely tied to. But so I was like scared, so I was like, okay, like, well, what do you see if I keep on this course? And she said that she could see me about being like 40 years old and having 3 kids running around. They all looked like girls, which I actually want to have all boys. And she said that I was alone. So with this toxic relationship I was in, a complicated story, but essentially, like, thinking that, I'm like, oh yeah, I could see that. Like, I need to quit talking to him. I need to just step away from that, allow us to be different, because yeah, I could see myself, like, getting married to him, having kids, and then him leaving and having something crazy going on. But in retrospect, looking at it, I'm like, what if that meant that I was supposed to be a consecrated single person and adopt children? Like, the whole concept of a psychic is that they can't always tell everything. In this specific example with Samuel, like, there is so much in it that Saul knew 100% it was wrong. You know, I knew that I wasn't really supposed to, and that it wasn't really okay, but I think it's interesting in Deuteronomy 18 there, where it lists every single type of the medium. And then here in the Catechism, of course, in 21:16, it talks about divination and magic, and how all forms of divination are to be rejected. Recourse to Satan or demons, conjuring up the dead, or other practices falsely supposed to unveil the future. Consulting horoscopes, astrology, palm reading, interpretation of omens and lots, the phenomenon of clairvoyance, and recourse to mediums all conceal a desire for power over time, history, and in the last analysis, other human beings, as well as a wish to consolidate hidden powers. They contradict the honor, respect, and loving fear that we owe to God alone. So when I went and saw this lady, she essentially told me that I had arthritis in my soul, that it was just like so deep in me that I really needed to have this work done. So I accepted it. I was like, sure, like, here's however much money. And over the next couple days, I got really sick. I got a fever of 102.4. Like, it was just, I was miserable. And I like contacted her. I told her, and she's like, oh, I didn't expect it to start working this soon, but yeah, like, that is a symptom. Like, things can, you know, as everything's kind of working itself out. And I don't remember any of the other details other than I quit seeing her after I spoke with my spiritual director, and you know, he was like, well, you know the story, right? And I was like, well, now I do. So discontinued that. Haven't seen her again. Obviously, like, information is power when utilized, and knowledge is important. So I just wanted to share that story with you, just because Easter is coming up, and sometimes our expectations of other people can get in the way of our happiness and of what it is that we're supposed to do. And I am guilty of that, like, to this day. So just encouraging you to stay in the Word and stay in God, and make it to confession this week. It is Holy Week, and we have several opportunities. Most parishes open up the doors, and, you know, the wait might be a little bit longer, but it's also the much more worthwhile thing. They say anything worthwhile is worth waiting for, right? So I hope you all had a happy Palm Sunday, and I hope you all have a very blessed Holy Week and a happy Easter next week. I'll see you then. So God bless. We'll talk soon.